In the flickering candlelight of Hampton Court Palace, a shadow moves behind a heavy velvet curtain. It is not an assassin nor a ghost, but a queen in the throes of a private, agonizing ritual. She sits before a silver mirror, her face a landscape of pockmarks and scars, the legacy of a smallpox infection that nearly killed her decades ago. But what she does next is not a cure. It is a slow, deliberate act of self-destruction. She dips a sponge into a jar of thick white paste Venetian ceruse and begins to plaster it over her skin. It smells of vinegar and something metallic, something deadly. This is the woman who defeated the Spanish Armada, who defied the Pope, who ushered in a golden age. But here in the silence of her bedchamber, she is a prisoner of her own vanity, poisoning herself one layer at a time to maintain the illusion of eternal youth. Welcome to Medieval Spirits. Today we are going to peel back the layers of silk pearls and lead paint to reveal the rotting reality of the Tudor court. We will smell the stench of the unwashed bodies hidden beneath perfumed doublets. We will taste the gritty sugar that turned royal smiles into black voids. And we will examine the forensic evidence of a regime that was quite literally toxic. This is not the sanitized history of costume dramas. This is the visceral, unwashed truth of what it took to be the Virgin Queen in an age before plumbing, before dentistry, and before we knew that beauty could kill. The stench of the royal court was said to be so overpowering that it could be smelled miles downwind, a miasma of grandeur and filth that defined an era. Queen Elizabeth I wasn't just a monarch, she was a walking legend, a living deity wrapped in cloth of gold. She called herself the Virgin Queen, wore fancy dresses, covered in jewels, worth more than the entire city of London, and ruled with a sharp mind and a hand of iron. People remember her for her powerful court beating the Spanish Armada and making England a strong Protestant country. But behind all that beauty and power, under the thick makeup and shiny pearls, was a woman full of fear, pride, and obsession. She cared deeply about how others saw her, for in the Tudor world, image was not just vanity, it was survival. And when it came to staying clean, things got really strange. Back then, hygiene wasn't about staying healthy or killing germs. Germ theory was centuries away. It was about looking good, smelling rich, and displaying your status. And Queen Elizabeth turned it into a kind of performance art. She thought water could make her sick, opening the pores to the deadly miasma that carried the plague. She was so afraid of getting old, so terrified of losing the adoration of her people, that she treated her body like something sacred, something that couldn't be touched by time or even by soap. In this video, we'll show you 5 of the weirdest and most shocking things Queen Elizabeth I did to stay clean. And the last one, you won't believe it. Elizabeth had a powerful addiction: sugar. At the time, sugar was not the cheap commodity we know today. It was white gold, rare, expensive, and imported all the way from the slave plantations of the New World and North Africa. Most people might never taste it in their lifetime, or perhaps only a pinch at a wedding. But for the Queen of England, it was everywhere. She didn't just enjoy sweets, she drowned in them. Her royal meals included candied violets, sugar-covered fruits, sweet almond marzipan, sculpted into castles, and desserts soaked in syrup so thick it had to be eaten with a spoon. To have sugar was to show off your status, to prove you could afford the most expensive spice in the world. Elizabeth didn't just eat it. She used it to show off England's growing power and wealth. But here's the shocking truth: this sweet obsession came with a terrible, visceral cost. In the 1500s, dental care was primitive, more akin to torture than medicine. Toothbrushes were rough, made of horsehair or hog bristles, and most people cleaned their teeth with twigs, rags, or crushed eggshells. The Queen, however, had her own special mix, a homemade toothpaste made of sugar and herbs. Yes, sugar. The very thing rotting her teeth was the same thing she used to try to clean them, grinding the crystals into her enamel every morning. To make it worse, she also used gritty powders, like pumice and cuttlefish bone, that scratched away her tooth enamel, leaving the sensitive dentin exposed to the rot. The pain must have been excruciating, a constant throbbing drumbeat beneath the surface of her composure as she negotiated treaties and ordered executions. Over time, her once royal smile turned into something shocking, a black void in a face painted white. Foreign visitors noticed it and wrote home about it with cruel fascination. By the 1590s, the French ambassador reported that her teeth were very yellow and unequal, and later others noted they were black, broken, or missing entirely. Her breath was said to be so foul it made people around her physically uncomfortable, forcing them to take a step back when she spoke. Sometimes her words were hard to understand because she was speaking through a mouth of rot, her lips sunken over empty gums. Yet she refused to let doctors pull them out. Elizabeth was known to be stubborn and terrified of pain, a fear likely born from the brutal medical practices of the time. To convince her it wasn't deadly to remove a rotten tooth, one of her bishops, John Aylmer, even volunteered to have a tooth pulled in front of her. Imagine that, a high-ranking church official willingly screaming in agony, blood pouring from his mouth, just to get the Queen to sit in the chair. But perhaps the strangest part was what happened next, a testament to the cult of personality she had built. Rather than mock her decaying teeth, the noble women in her court copied them. That's right. They blackened their own teeth with soot charcoal or dark pigments to match the Queen's look. In her court, even tooth decay became a symbol of class, a twisted badge of honor. If the Queen had black teeth, then black teeth meant beauty, power, and wealth. It meant you could afford enough sugar to rot your mouth. The darker your smile, the richer you must be. In a world where everything the Queen did became fashion, even rotting teeth became desirable. That's the power of royalty, to turn disease into desire. It was a macabre masquerade, a court of smiling skulls mirroring the decay of their sovereign. You may have heard the shocking quote, "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not." Some say Queen Elizabeth I really said it. Others say it's just a legend. But either way, it shows how people thought about cleanliness in the 1500s and how strange it was compared to today. Back then, water was seen as dangerous, a chaotic element that could kill you. People believed it could carry illness, weaken the body by softening the skin, and let in bad air, something they called miasma. This invisible poison was blamed for spreading deadly diseases like the Black Death and the sweating sickness. To many, taking a bath wasn't healthy, it was a game of Russian roulette. So Queen Elizabeth avoided it. Instead of washing with soap and water, she had a different routine, one that emphasized dry cleaning over wet. She would change her linen underclothes, called shifts, sometimes several times a day. People believed that the soft, white fabric acted like a sponge, pulling sweat, dirt, and toxins out of the skin and trapping them in the weave. No water needed, just fresh fabric, endless piles of it, laundered by an army of washerwomen whose hands were raw from lye soap. When she did freshen up, she used rose water vinegar or herbal mixes made by her royal apothecaries. These were gently dabbed onto her skin by handmaids with soft cloths. It was a slow, careful ritual, not for hygiene, but for appearances. Her body was treated more like a sacred object than a human one, an icon to be polished, but never submerged. It had to stay perfect at all costs. Why not just take a real bath, because that was no small task. Her palaces had no plumbing, no running water, no boilers. If she wanted a bath, it meant dragging out a giant wooden tub lined with linen to prevent splinters, heating dozens of buckets of water over open fires, and calling in at least 3 servants to pour, stir, and prepare the herbs. It was like planning a royal ceremony, a logistical nightmare. The water would cool rapidly in the drafty stone halls, leaving the bather shivering in a tepid soup of their own filth. Bathing was a luxury, not a habit. And yet people called her clean. She wore hundreds of gowns made of fine silk and velvet encrusted with gold thread and jewels. She smelled like flowers and spices, a walking potpourri. She kept perfumed gloves, scented handkerchiefs, and demanded her appearance be flawless from head to toe. But all of this created an illusion of cleanliness, not real sanitation. There was no scrubbing, no rinsing, no soap as we know it. Elizabeth didn't avoid bathing because she was dirty or lazy. She avoided it because too much reality could ruin her perfect image. Water could smudge her white makeup. It could soften the illusion. It could make her human. And in her mind, a queen was not supposed to be human. She was supposed to be England. Queen Elizabeth's face is one of the most famous in history. White as porcelain, smooth like a statue, and cold as stone. But that wasn't her real skin. It was a mask carefully painted every day, not for beauty, but for power. In her time, pale skin meant wealth class, and even a sign from God that you did not have to work in the sun. The whiter you were, the higher you stood. So the queen took it to the extreme. She didn't just wear makeup. She used it to build a myth, a perfect version of herself that could never grow old or weak the mask of youth. Her favorite product, Venetian ceruse, a deadly mix of white lead and vinegar. It created a flawless, opaque look, hiding every blemish, scar, and shadow. But underneath it was eating her alive. Lead is a potent neurotoxin that is absorbed through the skin. This poison soaked into her pores, causing rashes, gray, shriveled skin, open sores, and long-term scarring. It literally ate away her epidermis. As her real face was slowly destroyed, she simply added more layers of makeup, thicker and thicker, until her appearance became a frozen mask, a shell of paint, holding a crumbling face together. By the end of her life, it was said that the layer of makeup was nearly half an inch thick, a cracked fresco painted over a ruin. But it didn't stop there. For her lips, she used bright red colors made from cinnabar, a mineral containing mercury, one of the most toxic substances on Earth. The more she used it, the sicker she became. Mercury poisoning leads to memory loss, irritability, depression, and tremor symptoms that plagued Elizabeth in her later years. Her mood changed violently. Her memory faded, her body weakened, and her hands sometimes trembled so much she could barely hold a pen. These are classic signs of mercury poisoning known as Mad Hatter's disease. And the queen had no idea she was poisoning herself every time she painted her face. So why keep doing it? Because her face didn't just belong to her. It belonged to England. Her image was her power. It made her seem ageless, godlike, untouchable. She didn't allow painters to show her real features. Instead, artists had to use official face patterns copied from younger portraits, stencils of a woman who no longer existed. No matter how old she got, her paintings stayed the same, youthful, perfect, eternal. She even refused to be seen in natural light. Candles and shadows helped hide the truth. In her final years, her face became so delicate people whispered that touching it could cause the makeup to crack and fall apart like dry plaster. She barely washed her face. Why would she washing it? Meant wiping away the illusion and revealing a fragile, aging woman beneath the mask of the Virgin Queen. Did she know the makeup was killing her? Historians still debate it, but one thing is clear: she chose the mask over her health. She was willing to destroy her body to keep the legend of Gloriana alive. To truly understand Queen Elizabeth's hygiene, you need to understand her deepest fear: losing control. Every inch of her body, her painted face, perfumed gloves, and carefully chosen scents was not just about looking good. It was about holding power and hiding weakness. In her time, bathing wasn't just rare. It was risky. People believed water could carry disease, and bathing meant exposing your body both physically and symbolically. To be naked was to be vulnerable, and for a woman who had seen heads roll on Tower Green, vulnerability was a death sentence. It was seen as soft, intimate, even dangerous. And Elizabeth, who had witnessed her mother Anne Boleyn be destroyed by the court, would not allow herself to appear fragile. To her, a naked body was a vulnerable body. So she avoided water and built a new form of cleanliness, one made of perfume and ritual. Every day, she surrounded herself with strong, sweet smells. Her maids prepared rosewater, lavender, oil, vinegar infusions, and herbal mixtures brewed in the palace's still rooms. These liquids weren't meant to clean the skin. They were meant to cover odor and create the illusion of freshness. A few drops behind the ears, a wipe on the wrists, a fragrant handkerchief tucked in her sleeve, and she would drift through her court like a walking flower garden, untouched by human scent. She carried pomanders, small ornate balls of gold or silver filled with herbs, spices, and resins like musk and ambergris, hidden in her dress or worn on her belt. Whenever a foul odor crept too close, the smell of the Thames, the unwashed bodies of her courtiers, she would lift one to her nose and breathe in the controlled world she had built. These objects weren't just for comfort. They were a clear message. I am not like you. I do not stink like the rest of the world. Even her clothing was part of the performance. Her gloves were perfumed with ambergris, her handkerchief soaked in oils, and her dresses layered in stiff design to hide her body and trap scent. And as for her hair, it was rarely washed. Washing it was seen as dangerous, especially for someone who wore so much makeup. Instead, her real hair was stiffened with sugar water and egg whites, then powdered with flour or starch. As she aged and began to lose hair, likely from years of lead and mercury poisoning, she switched to wigs, especially auburn ones, to keep up her image. She owned over 80 wigs by the time she died. But underneath all that powder and perfume, her body was falling apart. Years of toxic makeup had left her skin scarred, thin, and blistered. Rumors spread of peeling skin, open sores, and a face too damaged to touch. She became a ghost, haunting her own wardrobe, draped in finery that weighed heavier than the crown itself. From the outside, Queen Elizabeth I's palaces looked like heaven on earth. Massive stone walls, golden ceilings, velvet carpets, and halls filled with music and silk. But take one step past the royal image, and you'd find something far less glamorous. There were no toilets, no sinks, no plumbing. That's right. Behind all the beauty, the Queen lived in a world that smelled like a sewer. Her most private toilet was a fancy wooden chair called a close stool. It looked elegant on the outside, covered in velvet, but under the cushion was just a ceramic pot for collecting waste. It had to be emptied by hand-cleaned and perfumed multiple times a day. This task fell to her ladies in waiting, specifically the ladies of the bedchamber. While the king had a groom of the stool, Elizabeth's intimate needs were attended to by trusted women. Being close to the queen during her most personal moments meant being close to power. But the rest of the palace was far more disgusting. There were no flushing toilets, just chamber pots, buckets, or bowls for waste used by everyone. These were dumped into cesspits hidden beneath floors or just outside palace walls. The job of cleaning all this waste fell to men called gong farmers or night soil men. They worked at night carrying buckets of human waste through dark hallways and narrow stairs, trying not to spill as they emptied the filth into open trenches. The smell was awful, and it never really went away. To cover it up, the palace burned herbs like lavender, rosemary, and sweet marjoram. People sprinkled flowers on the floors and laid down straw or rushes soaked in oils to try to trap the odor. But these rushes weren't cleaned often. Dirt, hair, crumbs, grease dog waste, and rot built up underneath, creating a hidden layer of filth that attracted rats and vermin. Even the queen couldn't escape the stink. She moved her court from palace to palace, not just for politics, but to escape the smell. When a palace became too foul, she would leave, allowing servants to scrub it down and air it out. The longer she stayed in one place, the worse the waste problem became. No amount of perfume could hide the truth forever. This was the true face of royal life, a world of gold and velvet on the outside, but decay and disease underneath. If you enjoyed this dive into the fragrant and filthy world of the Tudors, be sure to like and subscribe to Medieval Spirits for more dark history. In the end, her true cleanliness was not on her skin, but in the sterile, frozen perfection of her painted image, a mask that smiled even as the woman beneath it slowly died.